Alright, quick update on Cardano. So, since our last video, we were talking about this breakdown of this head and shoulders pattern coming into fruition. It looks like that is exactly what we've done. We actually broke up in the past couple of days. We confirmed the 786 Fibonacci and the neckline of this head and shoulders as resistance before we started to break down. So, I want to talk about the higher time frames, the pattern that we talked about last week. I'm also going to start off on a blank chart and talk about one very important level that I do see breaking very soon before we do head over to the lower time frames. Talk about the oscillators, momentum indicators, what is the risk looking like right now, and where are we likely to break down before the next video. So with that being said, let's jump right in. I'm going to start off on a blank sheet because I really just want to highlight two different things. First of all, depending on how you want to draw this, because you can just draw a horizontal ray, I'd say this would be your line of best fit at this moment in time. We are basically falling to the downside of this line. Now, we've come down, we've back tested this. Let me change the color. We've back tested this once, we've back tested this twice, 3 times up, 4 times up, 5 times up, 6 times up, and now we're heading down for the 7th time. So if you are a seasoned veteran to my channel, then you would have heard me say this saying many times before, but resistance and support gets weaker and weaker the more times you come up to the upside to hit it. And that, once again, this makes the same sense if you're talking about the upside or the downside. For example, if we flip this and we were coming up, you know, again and again and again and again, then we'd be saying, okay, it's very likely that we break to the upside, because the more you come into it, the weaker and weaker it gets. But we're not doing that. We're coming to the downside, and we are breaking through it on the daily time frame. Once again, we have not had a candle body close below this approximate region right here. So if we do have a daily candle body close below basically 45 cent, if we have a solid close below 45 cent, it's actually approximately 44.88 cent. So really not a big difference, but if we do close below this previous candle body close, then we are going to massively capitulate. Now, I also talked about this on the other time frame, but if we do start off on a blank chart, you can see an absolutely beautiful head and shoulders over here. Now, you can draw this a few different ways. You can actually draw it like this, or you can actually draw it back from here and then draw the shoulder up to here. Either way is valid. Either way, the price target is going to be the exact same to the downside. Do we have the price target of this over here? Yes, I believe we do. So we talked about this in the last video, that if we did have a major break to the downside of this head and shoulders pattern, we'd be heading all the way down to basically 24 cent, which when we originally started talking about this was, if I can grab this was a 52% drop. And I do think this is coming into fruition for ADA's bear market low. I don't think we're just going to rock it down here and be here within the next week or so. However, I do think this green box down here between the regions of 22.5 and 12.6 cent is where ADA is going to bottom. Now, you know, if you are an ADA fanboy and before you do throw rocks through my window, I don't actually think that we're going all the way down to 12 cent. However, this is a massive target backed up all the way down here. You know, we really don't have much support after we do break beneath this 1.618, which also correlates to some wicks down here. So as I always say on my channel, you know, we take our price targets one step at a time. I think we're moving down to 22.5 cent. I've been calling for this for a while. But before we do head down to here, I will not be having any more bearish price targets. So as we get closer and closer to 22.5, I will be, you know, once again, taking it one step at a time and seeing how this goes. So in the short term, we talked about this bearish breakdown of this asymmetrical triangle, which is also a bear flag. If you do extrapolate the price target of this all the way up here, you can see that's what we're drawing from. The price target of this would be down here at 35.6 cent, which is just beneath a 2.6 Fibonacci at 36.5. So what we actually did, you know, I was calling for a breakdown to the downside of this. What we actually did is we broke to the upside. We confirmed the 786 Fibonacci as resistance. We confirmed the neckline of this head and shoulders as resistance. And as I always say on my channel, a failed move equals a fast move in the opposite direction. What does that mean? We tried to break bullish. We did not break bullish for very long, so this was a failed move to the upside, and a failed move equals a fast move. As you can see, within 4 hours, we rocketed back down, back tested it as resistance, and now we're heading back down to the downside. So Once again, failed move equals a fast move in the opposite direction. I find it very, very likely that ADA is going to start heading down very, very quickly now. And it's not just ADA, you know, Bitcoin had this pump for like one day. It basically backtested its previous all-time high and it confirmed it as resistance. You know, we're falling beneath Bitcoin's previous all-time high. The total crypto market cap has been heading down for 13 weeks on the Heikonashis. The same with the total crypto market cap, or the total altcoin market cap on the Heikonashis. So, you know, we're very clearly not at our bottom yet. You know, it doesn't look like we've got any type of bottoming structures. All signs point for one last capitulation to the downside, and I am going to be looking forward to taking advantage of cheap Bitcoin, cheap ADA, cheap Ethereum. You know, as I always say on my channel, there has been tons of moon boys over on crypto Twitter, crypto YouTube, that for the past couple of months have been religiously bullish, and all of them have just been getting absolutely slaughtered. If you've been bullish for the past couple of months, then you've been wrong. I mean, look at the total too. There was no point in time where if you were bullish at any time in this market structure that you were right for more than like 1 or 2 days. And once again, we are snapping back to reality and heading down to the downside. So I do think ADA is going to be a good steal as we do get down to these lower levels. I do think 22 cent is in play, and that is definitely an area where I personally look on accumulating some ADA to make some short to mid-term trades, taking profits in Bitcoin, moving my profits around into different altcoins, which I think will do very, very well. ADA's not really a long-term play for me. I am happy to pick it up at these massively discounted rates though, down here at these regions. So once again, just letting you know, we have solidified the breakdown. We had a fake out, failed move equals a fast move in the opposite direction. We broke back down, confirmed the head and shoulders as resistance. And now if you do start to see that we are closing daily candle bodies below 44.8 approximately, we are going to have a massive leg back down to the downside. So let's move on to our oscillators before we do wrap up this video. So on the higher time frames, we really did head up with this bounce very, very quickly and euphorically. Like for Bitcoin, for example, if we head over to Bitcoin on the daily, you can see we just literally had a 5% bounce out of absolutely nowhere while the stock market was closed. The stock market opened and the dollar went on a rampage, and the SPY, if we head over to the weekly, you can see we opened bearish. So, you know, we might be heading up a tiny bit on the day, but that is because the opening of the stock market was all the way down here. So we're already getting battered on the stock market opening. So I do just think the general markets are going to be bearish for Bitcoin, for ADA as well. And you can see Bitcoin came up, made a lower high, and now it's heading back down. So I expect the same thing to happen for ADA as Bitcoin keeps on heading back down to the downside. Now, on the daily time frame, looking at our oscillators and our momentum indicators, you can see that the MACD rather has just tried to cross bullish, but now it's already heading back down. We basically had no momentum. We've come up and double topped with this region. We basically crossed bullish for like 1 day, and now we're heading back down already. So not a good sign for ADA, as we are basically having, if we zoom out, you can see this was a nice high over on the MACD. You've got a lower high. This was a double top formation with these two crosses that were basically fake outs. We've been going sideways, and now I think we're getting ready to head down as we do break down to the downside. The reason why the oscillators, momentum indicators have been relatively flat is because, as you can imagine, we've literally just been crabbing. If we do look at the bottom formation of this structure, we've just been crabbing. There's really not too much else to it. But when we do go over to the lower time frames, which I will in a second, I will show you why I think we're about to head down. If we do look at the MFI, the money flow indicator, we headed up way too fast for my liking from the 30th of June. So literally 5 days. In 5 days, we went from oversold down here at 18 all the way up to 54. So once again, this ran up way too fast for my liking. Retail did absolutely run in and buy the dip. Why am I saying retail? How do I know this was retail buying the dip and not institutions buying the dip? Well, if you do watch my channel already and you are a seasoned veteran, if you do look at my whale watching video, you will realize that when we were looking at what whales are doing during this bounce, whales were dumping. Every whale, you know, not every whale, but whales with more than 100 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin, whales with large amounts of Ethereum, other large amounts of crypto as well, they were dumping onto retail. And if you look at Glassnode, you can look at, you know, addresses with small amounts of Bitcoin, small amounts of Ethereum. Those are the retail traders. They were accumulating while institutions rather were dumping. So the fact that the money flow indicator went up this fast really shows me that we're ready for the next leg to the downside. The risk indicator is very, very beat down right now. However, when we do head over to the 4-hour, you can see this is where we had the euphoric run up in the money flow. Money is already starting to get petrified and run back out of the market. But on higher time frames, there is still a lot of room for money to flow out of the market, especially on the daily. Like within the next couple of days, within the next week or two, you can definitely see the MFI start to head down very, very quickly. But once again, heading back over into the lower time frames, you can see risk became relatively low as we did come down to the bottom for ADA around about 40 cents, or should I say the local bottom. This was when the risk indicator was saying, okay, you know, if you're going to buy for a couple of days, buy for a week or something. We started to head up. We got overbought on the risk metric. This headed up quite fast as well, and you can see this almost perfectly called the top up here. It didn't call this top because we did head up and got even more risky even though we made a lower high. So the risk is still relatively high in the lower time frames. As you can see, the MACD in the lower time frames is literally just lower high after lower high. You can see when we break bullish, you've got high, lower high, lower high, lower high, and every single time you normally get ready for that next leg back down to the downside. So the MACD, once again, this looks like it wants to absolutely get heading down to the downside ASAP. And if we look at the daily for the MACD, like I said, this is getting ready to cross bearish. So within the next day or two, if the MACD keeps on heading down on the lower time frames, and especially if you start to see ADA break below these lows down here, if you see it break below the previous candle body supports, if you see it really solidify this head and shoulders breakdown, we are going to see a massive move to the downside. There's really no other way of saying it. But that is basically all we've got. All of the indicators really point to the fact that we are about to head down. I do find it quite funny that in the lower time frames you are seeing the MFI basically be at almost zero right now. We are literally at 2 or 3, which could be indicative that in the lower time frames we might start to see a little bit of a bounce before we do head back down. So if that is the case, if we do have one more bounce before we do head back down, make sure that you're not getting suckered into these, because if you just draw a trend line of best fit, I mean, maybe a line of best fit would not be the best, but if you just look at the market structure, you've got highs, and lower highs. So until you start breaking the market structure, until you start heading back above these previous resistance points like 47.7, I really wouldn't hope on a bounce being too much more than just a short-term move back to the upside before you get ready for that next leg back down. Looking at the squeeze one before we do wrap up the video, the squeeze momentum indicator on the 4-hour is starting to head down. This looks like we're getting ready for our bearish move already. And on the daily, bears are still in control. It has been subsiding for a little bit, and this makes sense why it's been subsiding, because once again we had a massive bearish move into this. We formed a bearish structure, and until we start heading down, we're really not going to see the daily squeeze bomb head down too much, but the lower time frames are already calling for a big move back down. 1 hourly looks like we're gearing up for that move. We're already in the move, and the 4-hour looks like it wants to head down pretty quickly. So be super cautious. Once again, if you are new to my channel, I'm not an ADA hater. You know, once again, being completely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of ADA in the long term. However, I do have a saying: I don't love it, I don't hate it, I trade it. I've been sitting on the sidelines for ADA for absolutely ages right now. If you've been watching ADA YouTubers that have been bullish for the past couple of months, look back at their videos, look back at their predictions. They've all been getting wrecked. If you clear up the chart, switch over to the Iconarchies to clear out the noise, you can see no matter whether you're looking at ADA, whether you're looking at Bitcoin, whether you're looking at the total crypto market cap, the altcoin market cap, now is not the time to be bullish. Now is the time to be getting ready to buy the dip on the final capitulation, in my opinion. So I'm getting ready for the final leg to the downside. I think ADA has one last quick blast back down before the bottom is in. That is my opinion. It looks like that's what's going to be playing out on the momentum indicators. The risk of buying ADA right now is still relatively high in the lower time frames. If we head over to the hourly, you can actually see that we are starting to head up into this overbought, and you know, once again, hourly time frame, you can see things like the MACD, the MFI are already starting to flow out dramatically. So there's a lot of room to move down, especially on the daily time frame. Things like the MACD, things like the money flow indicator, there's a lot of room for money to flow back out of the market before that next leg back down. So in the short term, just like we said in the previous video, this target down here at 35.6 cent is what we should be expecting within the next week or two. And within the higher time frames, where I think ADA is really going to start having its bear market lows, is going to be around about 23 to 22.5 cent. This is where I'm going to be personally interested in picking up a large amount of Cardano for the short to mid-term. That's all I've got for you today. I hope you did enjoy today's video. And as always, my friends, Cowboy out. Peace.